Welcome to another episode of Progress, Potential, and Possibilities, discussions with fascinating people designing a better tomorrow for all of us. I'm your host, Ira Pastor.
Welcome, everybody, again to another episode of our show, bringing you another fascinating guest today, helping to create a better tomorrow. Today, we are continuing our virtual road trip. We are actually headed to the West Coast today, to San Francisco, by way of Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, meeting up with Dr. Abda Ali Haoudi, who is currently the strategy and business development lead, as well as managing director of the Biotechnology Park at King Abdullah International Medical Research Center, Ministry of National Guard Health Affairs, and also is a distinguished professor, scholar at Harvard University, Boston Children's Hospital. Dr. Haoudi has over 25 years of experience as an international research and development and innovation executive, having held several positions in R&D and innovation with vast expertise in science and technology policy development, strategy and business development, corporate development, as well as international partnerships. Dr. Haoudi has held several senior and prestigious positions in academia, government, and the private sector globally, including North America, North Africa, Europe, and the Middle East. And some of these key positions have included a founding vice president for research, executive director for Biomedical Research Institute, and chairman at the National Research Fund at Qatar Foundation. Dr. Haoudi was also research professor of cancer and infectious diseases at the University of Virginia and Eastern Virginia Medical School, and is a fellow at the U.S. National Institutes of Health. He has held several other positions in elite research and educational institutes, including visiting professor at Harvard Medical School and at the Pasteur Institute. Dr. Haoudi is an elective member of Hassan II Academy for Science and Technology since 2006. He graduated from University of Paris 11 and 6 in France with doctoral degrees in cellular and molecular genetics, as well as receiving executive education from Harvard Business School in corporate management and strategy. He's received multiple awards, including the Fogarty International Award. And in addition to that, he has published, as well as served as founding editor-in-chief for the Journal of Biomedicine and Biotechnology. We have a lot of interesting topics to go into today with him, but Dr. Abda Ali Haoudi, thank you so much for taking the time to come on the show today.
Well, thank you for having me with you in this program, and pleasure to be with you.
It's great having you. I would love to start off, as we typically do, by handing you the floor for a little bit to talk a little bit about yourself, a little of your background, what got you initially interested in genetics and molecular biology. And if you could take us up to sort of, you've published extensively sort of earlier on in your career on these retro elements in cancer, in aging, and developmental biology. Talk a little bit about some of your initial journey into this area of biological study, if you would.
Great. I actually consider myself really fortunate to have had a chance to get educated, trained in a number of different global institutions for research, starting from Morocco, my home country, but also through Europe and finally United States. For scientists, this is like the dream when you have a chance to graduate from some of the leading European institutions or universities, and as you mentioned, was Paris 6 and 11. Mm-hmm. And as you know, in France, the universities have numbers and names, so it's Paris 6 or University Pierre-Marie Curie, and Paris 11, which is Orsay or Paris Sud or some university. It all started from my undergrad training in Morocco, where I was trained in what's called general biology. At that time was actually, this is back in late 80s. It was the early time of genetic engineering in that part of the world. Later on, we'll talk more about molecular biology, but at the time we mostly genetic engineering. And of course, ultimately, at the end of my undergrad, the immediate next step was to identify really some of the leading universities in Europe, preferably for someone like me coming from North Africa. It was ideally French-speaking country. So that's how I joined the university in Paris to finish my graduate studies, receive my PhD in genetics, as you have mentioned. It's an area that was always fascinating, really, for me. Even when I was in high school, I imagined that we could tackle diseases through manipulation of the human genome. That was something really fascinating. Of course, at that time, it was still very early. We don't know yet much about the whole genome, but we talked, of course, about individual genes. Later on, it became genome, and then proteome, and then metabolome, and transcriptome, and so on. But even at that early stage, it was just so fascinating for me. Can you imagine? You can target specific gene, and therefore you can solve that health challenge or health issue. So that's why when first I get the chance to get involved in genetic studies, I didn't miss it. So I enrolled in the PhD program in human and cellular genetics in Paris. It was all done very well. And again, in science, it's never enough just the degree. Right. Really, the way you would really improve the knowledge, the understanding of science, and in particular complex area like human genetics or human in general, you really have to tackle it from different aspects, different expertise, get a different exposures also from different angles, from different institutions. So I managed to do that, I believe, to some extent successfully. So even at the time when I was still in France, I joined for a brief period of times for different, we would call them maybe fellowships, although it's not the medical sector, in Institut Pasteur, which is, as you know, one of also really leading in institutions in biomedical research. Later on, I joined the US National Institute of Health, which is one of the, if not the largest biomedical research entity, and actually globally. It received extensive really funding for biomedical research at different fronts, but also, as you know, the NIH, or the US National Institute of Health, has its own research programs and institutions, primarily around Maryland in Bethesda area, but also in North Carolina. So that was a really magnificent time for me. Imagine, young scientist in early stage of his career, mingling with some of the bright minds from all around the world. The NIH had that particular really aspect in it where it attracts a lot of scientists from around the globe as scholars, as fellow, some of them through the award that you mentioned, like the Fogarty International, and others through other mechanisms. And it was just really fascinating environment. Scientists from around the world with different training, different backgrounds in science and education, but also even different cultural background, brainstorming together how we can address this new challenge. It is actually, even after more than 20 years after that experience, I still tell my colleagues from all around that one of the best institutions you can get early training in science in the early phases of your career has to be the US National Institute of Health. Of course, it's not at all minimizing from the of course, the importance of other biomedical research institutions, whether in US or Europe,
Sure.
Canada, and other parts of the world. But it's still, I think it's just fascinating and great place to be for that early stage of career. For others, even throughout their career, they spent it at the NIH. Again, as a part of the time when I was in the US, and after leaving the NIH, I joined the academia. Initially, the University of Virginia Medical School in Charlottesville, then moved to take on faculty positions at the Eastern Virginia Medical School, the same state, and going up to the ladder of faculty positions one after the other, doing what is expected to do from any researcher, just open the horizons and explore ideas and try to contribute as much as possible to our knowledge, particularly always related somehow to genetics, molecular genetics. So I got involved in some of the really fascinating area at that time was for me how components of the genome or the gene can really impact the rest of the gene itself, the rest of the genome itself. Those what we call mobile genetic elements or transposable elements. And not really wanting here to get into all the scientific concepts and their details,
Sure.
but that was really just fascinating. And even what excited me even more is, could we even use that ability of some genes to start jumping around in the genome and disrupt some of the cancer gene or cancer, let's say, producing genes, possibly. So I explored that at one point, and then here is the interesting part. Then or another interesting part. In the midst of all of that and building my research career, I got this interesting opportunity from the Middle East, from Qatar. And this is back in around 2005. Qatar was interested to establish a science and technology initiatives. The way it was done, primarily through an institution, the leading institution there called Qatar Foundation, the way it was done was actually to handpick few scientists from around the world, very small team, very small group of about 6 or 7 different areas of science, some in the biomedical field, some in environment, some in energy, some in computing science, some in social sciences, behavioral science, humanities. And then we met in Qatar. This is late 2005, and we started thinking, okay, what exactly can we do? And for scientists, by training, the way we usually organize ourselves is that we have a question or hypothesis, and we try to solve it. Here there was no hypothesis. There was, okay, there is an idea. What do you think? And I have to admit that we struggled, that small team of 6 or 7, we struggled for a few hours and trying to understand what exactly could we do or should we do. But the leadership of that foundation, I think they were very, I still believe that they were very smart, not telling us exactly what we need to do, but actually laying the foundation for us to come up with some creative, innovative ideas or initiatives on how to contribute to science and technology development in that country or in this part of the world. So later on, a few months, then we come up with the whole concept of national research institutes. That was the time when then I was invited to join the Qatar Foundation as the founding VP for research. And as a result of that tenure, there was the setup of 3 national institutes for research. One is the Biomedical Research Institute, and then the Energy and Environment Research Institute, and then the Computing Research Institute. And was also part of it is also to really bring to more really global level science and technology park and the National and also a national funding agency. That was for about a period of about 6 to 7 years. And then I believe I must have been doing probably something right. So I was to join the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia for another really great biomedical R&D institution really here. That was still at a very, very early stage. I somehow find really myself extremely comfortable in entities that are at the early stage and contributing to launching really this great institution or national initiatives. So that's how I joined the institution where I am today, contributing to bring in some maybe forward-looking strategy for developing and implementing biomedical research, not necessarily just copy and paste from what I have seen, but perhaps I think that could contribute also to this part of the world, to this region, to address some of the local challenges, but also taking into consideration the local regional realities. That was really important. And that's what I have been doing for the last about 7 years. And now moving from academic research to trying to translate some of that knowledge or finding into biotechnology projects. This is where we are now, and then hopefully sometime in the near future we can bring some interesting also programs and initiatives here in the country, but also with partnership with the regional or global academic and industrial partners.
That's wonderful. That's really wonderful. And it's interesting, before we get to what you're currently doing and the biotech park and so forth, it was interesting because, as I was going through PubMed and you sort of looking at this evolution of your own research as you were just taking us through it, in sort of the mid 2012, 2015, you published a few times in Lancet Oncology, first with the Qatar Foundation talking about sort of cancer burden in the Middle East with the focus on Qatar, and then a little later on focusing on sort of broader cancer control issues, social health determinants in the region regarding cancer. I wonder if you could just say a few words about sort of that period, because later on we'll get into some of the sort of the themes in terms of cancer vaccines and everything that was happening at the recent biotech summit. Talk a little bit about what was happening then, and sort of because you were mentioning sort of going from the gene to sort of disease and sort of the broader social determinants of disease. Take us through a little bit of sort of just the cancer theme, if you would, at that part of your career.
Oh, absolutely, yes. Exactly. During that period of time, I was in Qatar Foundation, and a part of my role was to contribute also to setting up a national health strategy, and in particular, focus was on cancer strategy and cancer research strategy for the country, not only for one institution. So in partnership actually with a number of really renowned scholars, whether physicians, oncologists, but also cancer researchers from Qatar, but also internationally. And in particular in this area of cancer strategy was actually working hand in hand with Lord Ara Darzi from UK, who was really very, very well-known cancer surgeon. And we put together with really great team a national cancer research strategy. Mm-hmm. So we wanted to make sure that whether our cancer researchers and physician oncologists from the country, the region, and other potential partners also could learn about our effort or what we are planning for the future. So what we publish it in the Lancet Oncology. That was around that period of 2012. Yep. And then a couple of years later, that's when I moved to Saudi Arabia. And again, cancer burden is really not just one country challenge. It's regional. It's a global challenge. Yeah. So moved here, we also expanded that effort into the whole GCC, cancer burden and cancer challenges. And then a couple of years later, then we also, as a part of disseminating those findings and knowledge, and calling for collaborations. We published again in the Lancet Oncology.
And one of the, please.
No, just again, as apart from the national cancer strategy or national cancer research strategy, personally also as a scientist, cancer was really one of my really interest area. So you will see that although my role as a VP for research, the administrative part of it was taking the lion's share of my time, but I managed from time to time to get involved in some research projects. So we see that a couple of few publications in cancer research. I would love to do more, but it looks like there is only that much you can do. And
yeah, and that, you know, as I said, I mean, that's why and I promise we'll get to everything you're doing now. But there's the one other place, because I really wanted to profile you alongside with everything else. But I thought one other very, and you have a lot of interesting publications here. The one other one that is personally to me, and I think it's a nice balance to all things cancer, was this really interesting paper in 2014, Molecular Therapeutics, where you published at the time, which is kind of a unique concept on stem cell conditioned media. And here now we're talking about sort of the reverse. We're talking about regenerative medicine here, and sort of the concept of cocktails, the ability, if you want to do something like regenerate, tissue repair, wound healing, things of this nature, you may require multiple therapeutic moieties to get things done. Say just a couple words, if you would, about your interest also in regenerative medicine.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I think despite the fact that, let's see, from the therapeutic aspect of it, the overall stem cell field, except from transplantation, the overall stem cell research field has not yet really delivered much in terms of therapeutic applications. At one point, even one subset of those stem cells were the iPS, or the induced pluripotent stem cells.
Yeah.
There have been the Nobel Prize, I believe, back in 2012 by Yamanaka, where it was like the beginning of possibly that's it. This will be the future of therapy. The iPS, or the induced pluripotent stem cells, will be the next generation of therapeutics. But it's still, I think there are still a lot of unsolved challenges. We still need and how best really those cells could be controlled or could be targeted to different tissues or different organs, so that they can address those really health challenges we face. There are some early, let's say, positive indication that could be promising therapeutics, but still really very, very limited. And I really hope that in the near future of the scientific community, in particular in the area of stem cells, they can push further the boundaries and really bring those promises of stem cell therapies into realities. And I'm sure from different aspects, really. But now I really believe, and as we learn more, that most likely most of those promising therapies for the future will be a combination of different approach, not just one, with possibly stem cell plus gene therapy plus another maybe intervention. That's what most likely will give us better chances for more innovations, and therefore the therapeutic solutions for the health challenges.
Excellent. Yeah, that's why I was so impressed by sort of some of these papers I was reading of yours, and sort of you thinking about sort of the combination thinking, not just, obviously cancer has always had that, sort of pharmaco-intervention concept that we need multiple things in here. From the perspective of regenerative medicine, you thinking a decade ago about this is really impressive. So, okay, so now let's go into your current role, not just as leading strategy and business development at King Abdullah International Medical Research Center, but also directing the biotech park. We had the honor of hosting one of your esteemed researchers several months ago, Dr. Lamia Al-Omer, talking a little bit about artificial intelligence and her work in bioinformatics at the center. Talk about your role, a little bit about sort of the park, where it's located, and then somebody else that we had from, well, not down the road, but about 10 hours down the road in Jeddah at King Abdullah University of Science and Technology. We also had Dr. Mark Testerall, and he was playing more with plants and desert agriculture. Talk a little bit about the bio ecosystem as you view it, and how collaborations occur, sort of where directives come from. Take us through a little of this, if you would.
To do that, and I'm glad you were able to host Dr. Lamia Al-Omer, which is a really great colleague of mine, one of our leading figures in artificial intelligence and bioinformatics here in the country. The institution where I am now, in particular the Biomedical R&D Center part of it, is really very young institution. It's about 12, 13 years old. Compared with other similar institutions around the world, that's extremely young. So when I joined here, we were at this very, very, very early stage. So we started, okay, what do we want to do? What could we do? So we put together as a team really a 5-year strategy or strategic plan.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, yeah, we'd like to focus on, and they are not really that different from probably most of the biomedical academic research centers around the globe. But even at that time, and this is back in 2015, an integral part of that strategy was biotechnology development. Mm-hmm. This is 2000, and I'll tell you why I'm insisting on the date, 2015. It was an integral part of our strategy. Few months later, this is early 2016, a national vision was announced. It's called National 2030 for the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. That is a complete transformation of the entire kingdom at all levels: social level, economic level, technology also level, really complete society, country transformation. An integral part of that National Vision 2030 strategy, or Vision 2030, was actually technology development, diversification of the economy of the country. As you know, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia's economy is primarily based on hydrocarbon, oil. Yeah. That's really the main source of the economy. So there was that drive to diversify the economy and primarily encouraging, supporting technology development first. Now, in the health sector, that will translate into biotechnology development. So the reality is that we did not then have to adjust or adapt or revisit our strategy. It was already there before even the official national strategy announcement. So then we started step by step creating within our Biomedical Research Center, which is actually exactly what you would expect from any academic biomedical research center, basically meaning it is mostly fundamental basic research, trying to understand the causes of diseases and how normal cells or tissue will become diseased cell or tissue and therefore create disease. So that's primarily the focus. So the center gradually, from year after year, managed to get more and more publication, better quality publication. And as you know, in this field, and we start to measure the quality by the number of high impact factor publications. So we started to do really, really good. And then step by step, we start to generate some patents based on inventions, of course, of some of our scientists and clinicians. Remember here, the institution is an entire academic medical city with over 13 different hospitals, Sciences University with 7 different colleges, and Biomedical R&D Center with different branches around the country. So it's really quite an attractive ecosystem. But at that time, there was no biotechnology, really. Mm-hmm. And then this is where we started to think about, okay, how about if let's face it, let's put a phase 1 biotechnology park or incubator within our biomedical research center, which is what we did. And we allocated the space, really a number of labs within our biomedical research center. And those labs were meant to offer space, support for those innovators, those scientists who have, I apologize for the voice. I think I get a little cold. So
no problem. Yeah, I sound worse. You're fine.
Bear with me when the voice escaped for a few seconds. And then the idea was, then if we get really good at it, and we manage to develop some interesting project, we can go to full-fledged biotech park with its own dedicated facilities, projects, and so on. So we started really step by step, and then we purchased the first project, the second project, and now our interest is actually to partner with global pharma and global biotech. Why is that? Is, of course, no one single institution, irrespective of the means or resources, can do it alone. That's one. And two, of course, knowledge, science in general is really global, let's say, a global issue now. And we will be able to achieve better if we partner with other leading institutions, academic or industrial. So what we managed to achieve, which of course took us some time, I have to admit. I cannot tell you that it was just like that overnight. No, it took some time. It took a lot of building of infrastructure. We managed then to set up really key strategic partnerships with one with AstraZeneca. I can say it now because it's public information. Excellent. And then with Moderna. And the idea behind the strategic partnership was not simply to increase the sales of these companies or some late or final packaging. No, it was actually from early discovery, collaborative projects, from early discovery all the way to preclinical development, clinical trials or clinical development. And if successful, we move into commercialization, manufacturing and commercialization. So this is the best, really, or I believe this is the really best way to not only to accelerate the process, but also to ensure that from the beginning is done right and at the highest standard. We cannot afford to do biotechnology second class. Right. No, either done right or don't do it at all. And there is no better way than doing it right from the beginning, then partner with those who have been successful and who have done it around the world. So this is where we are, and we established a concept of we call it joint lab, and it's basically collaborative R&D with these companies. This is early, really. We're at the early stage of these partnerships, and hopefully this will help bring this biotech park into even higher, let's say, standards, hopefully, for the benefit not only for the country, but the region and even globally. If there is something that we need in this part of the world, is more of projects like this that connect us with the rest of the world in terms of innovation, scientific discovery, and also contributing to solving some of the major health challenges around the globe.
And, I think that, what you were just describing really culminated nicely. Just, it was a couple of weeks ago that the Riyadh Global Medical Biotech Summit concluded, and, the different, cell and gene therapy, cancer and infectious disease vaccines, genomics and precision medicine, clinical trials, real-world evidence. You're developing the full ecosystem, and you had, as you were just mentioning, people from all the major pharmas there, research institutes. You gave one of the most exciting keynote addresses I've ever seen. Right? You yanked the microphone away from the MC. Talk a little bit about the summit and a little bit of what happened there. It looked like a great time, and clearly, the fact that you're attracting, as you were just saying, all these groups there in 2023 is a major milestone. So say a few words about the summit.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. So actually, a few years earlier, we used to have what we call the annual research forum. Every year, we organize a research forum with mainly from our own scientists or scientists from other institutions in the country, and we invite some international speakers. But then year after year, we realized that this is time now. It's time now to bring it to the next level. Since we managed, or at least we believe we managed to establish a strong basic science foundation, let's start now to think about how best to translate it. In the biomedical field, translated it means also offering opportunities for biotechnology development, not necessarily only alone as our own startups, but also partnerships, joint ventures with biotech companies and other biopharma from around the world. So we started we launched the first biotech summit back in 2021, fall 2021. At that time, the whole world was still under the COVID-19 impact and also restrictions. So most of that event was actually a virtual event because we had to limit the physical presence and, of course, for the obvious reasons under that pandemic conditions. But that was time when we started saying, we are interested in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, not only our institution, but in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. This is a new strategic field for us, biotechnology development. It's, by the way, the biotechnology has received the highest, senior government interest, to the point where a national biotechnology strategy committee was set up. It's actually comprised of the major senior government officials. And the idea behind this committee, or the role of this committee, is to outline what could be some of the niche area where the kingdom could invest in and set up locally, but also in partnership with other interested partners. As a result of that, a number of initiatives are being set up now. For instance, in addition to our institution, there is also a new project called the Riyadh Biotechnology City.
Okay.
And that's still in the making. It's still an early stage, but it's also along the same concept where a whole biotechnology city, or a mega biotechnology park, is being set up to cover not only areas in medical biotechnology, or what we call the red biotechnology, but also agricultural biotechnology and industrial biotechnology. So we can see really in different parts of the country, there is this growing interest in developing and implementing projects, initiatives in biotechnology. And we really need that. It's an ecosystem.
Yep.
It's not one entity or one institution or one company. Obviously for us, for my institution where I am, we're a healthcare institution. So we focus primarily on medical biotechnology. So then we use this forum, the Biotechnology Summit, as a forum to meet with the interested global partners in biotech, pharma, those who are interested to explore with us possible collaborations. So each time we invite some of the really senior representatives from these biotech and pharma companies, and the list is really impressive and growing.
Yeah.
The time, I believe, was about 15, 18 companies. Last month, or the second biotech summit, it was a little over 35 different companies from around the world. And the idea, again, yes, on one hand to meet, but also to let the potential future partners know about what are we thinking about, where are some of the areas, possible areas for collaborations with mutual benefit. That can benefit really all parties. And as one of the concrete really outcomes of this of the last month Biotech Summit was those really key strategic partnerships that I mentioned, one with AstraZeneca and another one with Moderna. A few also other collaborations that are in the making with other companies, but they were still at an early stage of building really. And I think I could not hide it. I was just so excited about the fact that we moved from a forum where we usually, it's so exciting just to share knowledge, just talk
Yeah.
science and how we can translate it, which is fantastic, phenomenal, to now, okay, this is that part. The other part is also, how about if we translate that excitement into some projects on the ground? So hopefully near future will help us also build and develop those projects further.
You know, it's interesting because, you know, you mentioned, you know, a few times sort of this privilege throughout your career that you had this ability to ask, you know, what do we want to do? And it's interesting because, you know, some other guests that I've had on the show from Saudi have come from sort of other mega projects like NEOM, you know, up in the north, you know, building their little city there in the desert. I, you know, had a guest on from Saudi Aramco talking more about artificial intelligence and finding the oil. But it seems like there's an underlying sort of health, wellness, bio interest in some of these organizations as well. Are you talk a little bit of the cross fertilization here, because, you know, for NEOM, you know, they want to build sort of a health and wellness society out there in the desert. You know, how do you connect with some of these other projects that may not be bio projects per se, but they have a health component? Talk a little bit about, because I think it's all part of the same ecosystem in a way.
Absolutely, you're absolutely right, and that's really critical. That's why we have, on, I would say, really regular basis, but very frequently we have these multiple stakeholders meetings, brainstormings, what we can do together. Actually, a new entity that was just set up in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia recently is called Research, Development and Innovation Authority. Okay. And that's an entity that actually is set up to provide additional support, not only funding support, but also, let's say, policy development support to facilitate the, let's say, policies like logistics, how to make it much more smooth, how to facilitate also contractual arrangements, not to make those as burden on the entities, but rather as just one step, and then the most important focus should be on how best to succeed in this project. We actually talking about NEOM, you're absolutely right. As a matter of fact, just as of today, just sent to my colleague in NEOM on our non-disclosure agreement, so we can start talking about some collaborative projects. They are aware of some of the recent projects we are launching. And for NEOM, even at their early stage, they have actually just a magnificent concept on this industrial park, Oxagon park, but that's really large-scale manufacturing, truly industrial park. But where is the pipeline coming from? It could possibly come from some of those biotech initiatives that are being set up with some of the leading biotech in terms of in the health sector, with some of the leading biotech and pharma companies that we already start working with. So while we are doing the R&D, the preclinical, the clinical studies, if that has to lead to manufacturing, commercialization, one of the ideal partners could be the NEOM at that time. Mm-hmm. So we really discussed at multiple occasions these kinds of alignments on how we could work together. You know, the innovation value chain is in the biomedical field is really quite long and quite extensive. And it will be a real challenge for one institution to do it all from A to Z. But through this kind of partnerships, and I mentioned, for instance, the new entity, the Riyadh Biotech City, similar thing. It is also a project focused on like late stage when let's maybe after clinical trials, how possibly to push for late stage clinical trials, manufacturing, commercialization. Here is another partner. We need these multiple entities for the ecosystem to be really thriving and to maximize our chances to be successful.
Mm-hmm. One thing that ecosystem clearly will require, as everything that you were just mentioning, is great to have one Dr. Abdali Hadi, but maybe 5,000-10,000 of them. Talk a little bit about sort of how we get the next generation, whether it's the Saudi workforce, Qatar, the GCC in general, to generate that biotech workforce, that pharma work, whatever you want to call it, to fill this ecosystem. Because, you know, as you were mentioning before, it's an economy heavily based on petroleum and petrochemicals and so forth. Now we're transitioning it to biochemistry, to biotech, to molecular biology. Talk a little bit about that side of things, if you want.
Absolutely, you're absolutely correct that the capacity building or human capacity building is really an integral part of all those ambitious plans and programs that I mentioned to you, whether it's in Saudi Arabia or Qatar, or United Arab Emirates, or Kuwait, or Bahrain, or any other country for that matter. And actually, I would just step back for a little bit. And for instance, even when I was in Qatar, one of the flagship programs that I managed to establish there was Science Leadership Program.
Yeah.
That what the goal behind it was actually to identify those really young Qatari that are interested in career in science, whether it's an academia or pharma, but interested in career in science. We built a program for them where we, if I can use the word, match them with some of the leading institutions in North America and Europe, like Harvard or Yale or Caltech or Cambridge or Oxford or Imperial College or King's College and so on, where they can have their undergraduate or even graduate studies or even postdoctoral training. By being trained in some of those great institutions, then they come back after that and they start to contribute to some of the a new initiative that we were planning at that time. Here in Saudi Arabia, the scale was much larger, and the kingdom actually has really launched, this is a few years ago, a number of years ago even, a scholarship program, very actually, I have to admit, very smart approach, where a number of young Saudi were fully supported to enroll in any prestigious academic institution in North America or Europe. And the numbers are really impressive. We're talking about thousands of them, not few, dozens. And a large number of those have already, of those trainees or scholars, have already finished their graduate studies, received their PhD degrees, and they are in the process of coming back. This will be that next generation of scientists and scholars that will help really propel this whole biotech vision into really realities and make it really happen. In the same time, what we do in parallel, you know, you don't always need a PhD holder for these programs.
Sure.
Yes. You need different skills, different kind of training. So what we have built also, just from our institution, and I believe other institutions as well, but what we do in every single collaborative agreement we have, whether with academic entity or a company, we build the training or capacity building component in it, so that some of our staff can receive a training, whether it's just few weeks training in some special approach or a very focused approach, sometimes months of training in, let's say, in new technology that we don't have yet in our institution. So this is always have been really an integral part of it. And I'm sure in the near future, you will see much brighter people than just Abdel Ali. So many of them.
Coming back to you, you know, one thing I, you know, as we get to the wrap up of the show, one thing I neglected to mention, I mentioned your bio, but I did want to ask you about it because I thought it was quite interesting that, you know, right after you completed your PhD, you formed your own publication, the New Forum for Innovative Research in Biomedicine, Biotechnology. What made you decide to, at such an early part in your career, start a scientific publication?
Oh, yeah, right. That's a great question. I think it's throughout my life, even at that stage and even now, I always look for new challenges, and not to do exactly what has been done somewhere else, or have to wait until I get to this stage to do that, what is expected from me. And even at that time, at very early stage, you are right, in my research career, I thought that this is, let's think about a way of, it's not that at that time there were no scientific journal. There were so many.
Sure.
There were probably thousands of them. But I say, let's see. From my presence, and at that time I was the U.S. National Institute of Health. That's why I never forget that time of my career. It was so much support for a junior scientist like me at that time. Hey, you have your idea? Great. Pursue it. Try it. Fine. It's not the usual thing that a young scientist will do, but if you want to try it, try it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's, and I was just amazed by the type of support that I received from very well-established scientists and Nobel laureate, head of research institutions. They were all willing to be part of it, to encourage it. And that's really what I would say, that have really stayed with me as a main drive throughout my career, is that science is such a global adventure that whenever you can participate or whenever you can support others, you should do it. In any part of the world, in any institution you are. And of course, keeping in mind that collaborative nature of what we do, whether as scientists or others as clinicians or overall in the research.
Excellent. No, it's I wanted to come back to that, but as I said, I think that is just an interesting part of your very diverse career, and you know, just it's been a great story to see how this has all evolved, and how, as I said, it continues to evolve, and putting all of this into practice per Saudi Vision 2030 and beyond. So it's really, you know, I wish you the best with all this, and as you continue to develop it all, Abdali. Again, before I let you go, anything else coming up? I know you just had the summit. Any other major initiatives for 2023, as we're just entering the year? The new conferences, other areas, places that we may see you present in the coming months. Anything else that I missed? Please take the floor.
No, thank you. Really, I have to say, you know, in overall in the kingdom, there is probably no better time than now for whether it's biotechnology, because it's close to my heart, it's close to my bio training, but also in other technology really areas. There are so many really activities now, global events, forums, symposiums, whether it's in the biomedical field, in biotechnology, but also in other area of technology. For us, in particular, in my area of interest, I think we will focus this year on pushing further or forward the partnership, the strategic partnership that I mentioned to you, so that hopefully next year, early next year, we can then report on some of the early achievements we had, because we would like to keep the not only our existing collaborators or partners, but also future partners and collaborators interested in this part of the world, interested in us moving together, contributing as a community to hopefully solving some of those major really health challenges. Look at it also, as I'm sure you would agree, it is health impact, it's also economic impact.
Oh, yeah.
You know, biotechnology is this is public information, is expected to generate little over $770 billion just by 2024, which is next year. If you look at that, this is globally, of course, this is globally. If you look at that, that's a broader, translating to broader impact, economic impact of somewhere between $3 to $4 trillion. That is significant impact globally. And I believe that the kingdom is ready and prepared to take an active part of that. And hopefully in the near future, we can add more. what the world need really, and better health.
Outstanding, really outstanding. For everybody that is going to be listening to this particular episode of our show across the various podcast networks or watching on our YouTube channel, again, you've been listening to Dr. Abdali Howdy, Strategy and Business Development Lead, as well as Managing Director, Biotechnology Park, King Abdullah International Medical Research Center, Ministry of National Guard Health Affairs, also Distinguished Scholar, Harvard University, Boston Children's Hospital. Abdali, I want to thank you for taking the time out of your schedule to come talk and educate us for a little while about these topics. Obviously, thank you for doing these things and wishing you the best as you execute on them. And again, as we like to say here on our show, thanks for helping to create a better tomorrow for so many people out there via what you do. A really great story.
Thank you very much for having me, and it was really a pleasure being with you in this program. Thank you.
Good seeing you.